This is Taya Graham reporting for the Real News Network in Annapolis, Maryland. Allegations of corruption are still flying as advocates work to remove the influence of the bail bonds industry from politics entirely.
End cash bail! Freedom's not for sale! End cash bail! Freedom's not for sale!
It was last year that the Real News covered this protest at a swanky restaurant in Annapolis. There, as the bail bonds industry wined and dined the delegates inside, activists called for change.
I've been incarcerated, and there were times where I could not raise bail. And also I've seen people that could not raise bail and sat in the jail cell for a month waiting for their trial to come up.
The concerns that night were straightforward. The bail industry makes money by keeping people incarcerated, particularly African Americans. And that money finds its way into the pockets of politicians.
And there's other ways to handle our prison population and our offenders and things without being as unjust as we are.
A vicious cycle of jailing the poor to enrich not just the bail industry, but major corporations that fund it and legislators.
What was fascinating about the bail bonds industry giving was not just the amount of it, which was fairly staggering. We're third in the nation for a state where the bail bonds industry is donating to candidates, to parties, to try to get their position out there.
And now recent indictments by the FBI show just how true that is. According to charges handed down by a federal grand jury, prosecutors allege State Senator Nathaniel Oakes accepted bribes from a bail bonds lobbyist seeking to turn back reform.
Senator Oakes, hi, Stephen Janice from the Real News. I just want to get your sense of...
My lawyer.
Your lawyer? We won't talk about...
So we confronted Oakes at the State House today, and he left the building to avoid answering our questions. The bail bonds industry has given Maryland politicians hundreds of thousands of dollars, according to Common Cause Maryland. Many, like Senate Judiciary Chairman Bobby Zirkin, are in key positions to keep the industry afloat.
The giving patterns that we saw certainly prove some truisms that we've always felt were happening in Annapolis, but now we have some numbers to back it up. Number one being that your committee chairs are the ones that benefit the most from the industries that they oversee. Zirkin, the Senate committee chair, 11% of his donations in the last election cycle came from this industry.
Still, advocates today were undaunted.
Last week we heard news about a senator who, has been caught by the FBI accepting bribes from the bail industry.
They called for legislators to disengage from the bail bonds industry and return any donations, as well as block any new efforts to turn back reform.
Now, you were part of a group that says, hey, no engagement with the bail industry because of allegation of bribes. Why is that? Why don't you want the bail industry to engage with the legislature?
I mean, everyone has their First Amendment right. Lobbyists can come up to you and say whatever they want. Do you listen? Do you go to the dinner? Do you invite them in? Bail bonds is different. No one should have their freedom determined by whether they have money or not, and that's how the bail bondsmen eat. So they have a proclivity to lie. Demands
that some legislators say they will follow.
A group of advocates that say, hey, because of the bribe scandal and surrounding the bail industry and just that bail is bad in general for the African American community, are calling for the legislature not to engage with the bail industry this year. How do you feel about that?
Again, the advocates have a point. They represent many of the constituents that allowed me to be here. And I lean very, very closely to the viewpoint that they present. So anything that moves this ball forward, we're going to do that.
Including gubernatorial candidate Ben Jealous.
What the bail industry does is it profits off of the perpetuation of debtors' prisons. We believe we've evolved beyond it. But if you actually go to a jail, you spend time there, you figure out there's lots of folks there who literally have just lost their job because they could not afford to pay $1,000 or even sometimes a few $100s.
But for many who gathered on the first day of the legislative session, the battle over bail reform is just beginning.
These accounts of bribery makes my job as an advocate very, very hard because I work diligently to help restore folks' confidence in government.
An ongoing effort to fight the influence of money on an unequal system of justice that leads to profiting off poverty through courts, cops, and corrupt politicians.
So we really hope that legislators will step up and not be involved with the bail bondsman lobby. It's been shown now to be corrupt. It has a very narrow interest, and it really does not meet the interests of the public. And it's costly.
This is Taya Graham and Stephen Janis for the Real News Network in Annapolis, Maryland.